recently started off in Singapore and Malaysia. And so we're branching out across, and we're lending out our name, our techniques, our ideas, our website, in order to help other places around the world deal with a common problem. I want to also thank you guys for having us again. I remember a lot of familiar faces, and I know this may seem redundant, but it's just as exciting for me as it was the first time around, so I hope it's going to be just as exciting for you as well. And what this seminar is, it's a mold awareness seminar. So what we're going to learn about is we're going to learn what mold is, how it affects us, and we're going to get into its very basic core elements. At the end of the presentation, if you guys want to know how to remove it and how to tackle the problems, if you have companies and businesses that, and we're going to talk not only about mold but about air quality and things that affect all of us. So if you want more information at the end, I know we're kind of short for time, come and see us afterwards. We'll be happy to give you our cards and give you any information. Any questions will be asked for at the end, or come and see us personally. And without further delay, we'll just get right into the seminar itself. So what is mold? Can anyone tell? Well, never mind. Can anyone tell me what mold is, or your interactions with mold in particular?
Just raise that up a little bit on the screen.
I wish we could. We're kind of limited in terms of space, but so we could do.
Buck underneath or something.
Okay. I'll try to read as best as I can. So I guess for a lot of us, we need to understand what mold is. Mold is a type of fungi, and that's a common misconception of the pronunciation of the word. A lot of us will say the word fungi. Am I correct? It's actually pronounced fungi. Something that I like. I'm a word kind of guy, and so when I learned that, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. The only thing I've ever retained in my life was that. So. But one of the things about mold in particular is that it's very complex. It's not a single cell organism. It's not one particular issue. It's a very complex system, and we're going to get into like the intricacies of mold itself. We're going to look at how it's formed. But there are over 200 different variables of mold in itself. Some of the basics is that they're again more complex than what they actually appear. And they produce what we call microscopic spores that germinate in the presence of water. The best way to kind of illustrate it is try to picture a tree, and you have the tree, then you have the roots that are underneath the ground. Well, what you would see on the surface, and all of us have seen mold, I think, on the surface, correct? That kind of black, green, gooey, disgusting pile of stuff. Well, that's what we would typically see as the tree. The trunk and the branches and all that kind of stuff. But what's really the important thing is what's underneath, the roots. And that's what happens with mold, is that there's the outer layer, then there's the under layer. So a lot of times when we're dealing with mold, commonly what we would do at home is take a bucket of bleach and pour it on top of it, and it would remove the surface, and we think, oh, okay, great, the mold's gone, that's it, that's all. Not quite true, because those roots are still embedded inside of the material. And so, and the spores, the way we kind of look at it is the leaves on the tree. And when it gets to fall time and the leaves start to kind of wither and die, all it takes is a gust of wind to blow the leaves all across our lawn. Am I correct? Same thing happens with mold. So the spores, they grow up to the surface. It takes a gust of wind to cause those microscopic spores to go all throughout the house. And as it says here, they germinate or they reproduce in the contact of water or humidity and all that kind of stuff. Another interesting fact about mold is that it's allergenic. One of the microscopic compounds of mold, it's related to shellfish. So a lot of people that are actually allergic to lobster or shellfish will find themselves more susceptible or prone to mold allergies, which is an interesting fact. The molecular construct of mold itself is very similar to that of a shellfish. It has a hard exterior and a very soft interior. So really kind of neat science stuff. Obviously, mold causes major structural and health damages and can really become detrimental. Mold is dangerous, and if for some people, including the young and the elderly, people who have compromised immune systems, mold could actually become deadly. Because again, those mold spores, those microscopic leaves, so to speak, when they get passed through the air, they can get absorbed in, through your nose, through your mouth. And since our body is made up of a large percent of water, and they germinate in the presence of water, what do you think happens when it comes into contact with our internal makeup? It starts to germinate and cause a whole bunch of other problems. So I know we're kind of painting a really grim picture right after breakfast that there's this dangerous mold outbreak, but it really is a serious issue, which is why Mold Busters is expanding globally and trying to help other people work at solving this problem one step at a time. Where to look for mold? Common thing, we all know that if you look in the the deep dark basements, you'll find mold. If you look high up in the attics, but also behind walls, under carpets, and also in the air we breathe. One of the common places that we find mold in particular is behind the walls. And what's dangerous about that is that it's behind a wall. We can't really see it going on. So we have no real idea, how severe, how depth the problem really is. One of the neat tools that we have at our disposal, and again, if we had more time, we would pull out all of our really cool gadgets. We really are the mold busters here. We have these really cool gadgets that could zoom right into to a wall itself without causing any structural damage. So it's a thermal imaging camera that, when you point it into a wall, it'll show any change in temperature. So if it's, if I were to point it into, your eye right now, it would be like glowing red, really, really hot because it reads your core temperature. Point it into a wall, the same thing. It'll show the core temperature, but if there's presence of moisture or water, you'll see that happening. And where there's water and where there's darkness, there you have the best breeding ground for mold. So it's a very non-invasive way that we have at our disposal to detect the potential for mold and its dangerous effects in the home. Another place to look for mold, obviously, is furniture, fabrics, carpets, drywall, wood, wallpaper, food, obviously, plants and soil. Now, the interesting thing, I never knew that mold could really grow or thrive in fabric. It was just something I never really kind of thought about until I saw this picture. And we have it on our Facebook page, so if you guys are connected to Facebook, I would suggest that you go to facebook.com/bustmold. And you'll see a whole pile of interesting pictures and videos about this. But one of the things that struck me was there was a Porsche, and it went in for a detailed car wash. Got the outside, got the inside shampoo, cleaned up, looking great, and then it got parked into storage for the winter time. They pulled it out in the spring, and guess what? The entire inside was saturated with mold. The car was ruined. And so, what we see with mold is that, sometimes it happens when we least expect it. And it always surprises me where it'll pop up. Water. Why is mold such a problem? Well, two main reasons. One, obviously, structural damage. For people who own, for all of us who own homes, it could cause major problems, not only when we're living inside of it, but if we're trying to sell the home, or if, my wife and I, when we went to purchase our first home, we ran into a problem where the house that we really, really wanted, the attic upstairs was saturated with mold. And it was going to cost us just about everything that we had. We were young, we were 21 at the time, and it was going to cost us everything that we had to get the home that we wanted. So, we said, screw it, we're going to go find something else. But that's just one example of how mold could cause some severe damage structurally, and also emotionally and financially. At the same time, health problems. Recently, and I don't keep going into stories, but my poor grandmother, who is living with my uncle in Vanier, she was unaware that mold was in her basement, because that's where she lives. She's in the basement flat. And she kept getting sick. She kept having to go to the hospital with the doctor. And my grandmother's a really spry woman. She's 80-something years old, doesn't look a day over 50. She's always running around, causing ruckus. And she kept getting sick for no reason. And then we discovered through air quality testing, something that we'll get into later, that there was a huge presence of mold in the washroom.